Now that we know the increment level for 50 hours of training, let's substitute it to the formula. So again, increment level is 7. As to the qualification standard, unlike education requires a bachelor's degree, which is like increment level 6. But this time for training, just like your experience, the qualification standard is nothing or 0. So 0 is equivalent to increment level 1 if you go back to the increment table. So 7 minus 1, you'll get an actual increment level or actual increments equivalent to 6. Let's find out what or how many points you will get if you will have an actual increment of 6 or actual increment level of 6. Hi everyone! In this video, I am going to share with you how to compute your points for your training. So just like the previous videos that I have uploaded regarding the computation of points for education as well as computation of points for your teaching experience, similarly, we are going to use the same terms or similar terms in this video, such as increment table, increments, increment level, qualification standards, as well as weight allocation table. So let's begin. So let me share with you the increment table for the training first. As you can see in the picture, on the left is the increment level and on the right would be the range. So that's from how many hours to how many hours. This is the only way that I was able to think that I will be able to share the increment table with all of you guys, because again, I am afraid of sharing links, and I hope that this will be helpful for you. So I've cropped the picture so that the values will be visible and it will be very easy for you to compute your equivalent point as well. So we're almost done. So just be please very patient with this video. You can definitely just go back and forth to this part, and after this I'll show you examples, real examples. For example, we have teacher A, and she had attended a training, let us say from TESTA, for food and beverage, and she earned 50 hours of training for that. So let us say she was issued a certificate, and let's find out the increment level. By the way, this is a formula that we're going to use just like the first two videos that I have uploaded. So we have increment level minus the qualification standard equals actual increment level. So let's go back to the table. What is the equivalent increment level for 50 hours? Going back to the increment table, which range do you think does 50 hours belong to? So here it is evident that it falls from 48 hours to less than 56 hours. And this is equivalent to increment level 7. Now that we have found the equivalent increment level, let's go back to the formula. Now that we know the increment level for 50 hours of training, let's substitute it to the formula. So again, increment level is 7. As to the qualification standard, unlike education requires a bachelor's degree, which is like increment level 6. But this time for training, just like your experience, the qualification standard is nothing or 0. So 0 is equivalent to increment level 1 if you go back to the increment table. So 7 minus 1, you'll you'll get an actual increment level or actual increments equivalent to 6. Let's find out what or how many points you will get if you will have an actual increment of 6 or actual increment level of 6. Let's refer to this weight allocation table specifically for the training. So on the left side, you see here the increments from minimum qualification standards, and for the right side would be the equivalent points. So if you get 2 to 3 increments, the equivalent point for that is 4. 4 to 5 increments, that's 6. 6 to 7 increments, that's 8 points. And 8 or more increments, that's equivalent to 10 points. Now going back to our first example, the actual increments earned by teacher A after deducting the qualification standard from the increment level is 6. So that's equivalent to 8 points. Therefore, teacher A will get a total of 8 points for her training of 50 hours. Let's have another example. Teacher B earned 120 hours of training from TESTA and he was issued certificate, for example. So let's find out the increment level first, and then let's compute for the actual increments or the actual increment level after deducting the qualification standard. So let's go back to the increment table. We can see in the increment table that 120 hours belong to the range 120 hours to less than 128 hours. And it is equivalent to increment level 16. Now, let's go back to the formula and substitute so we can get the actual increments or the actual increment level. So again, 120 hours is equivalent to increment level 16, and the qualification standard is 0, which is equivalent to increment level 1. So the actual increments or the actual increment level is 15. Now let's refer again to the weight allocation table to find out what's the equivalent point for a total of 120 hours of training. Going back to the weight allocation table, it is obvious that the actual increment level or the actual increments earned by teacher B for 120 hours of training falls here at the top, which is 8 or more increments. And automatically, this is equivalent to 10 points. And the highest point that an applicant can get for the training is also 10 points. Therefore, teacher B will get a perfect score of 10 points for his training during the ranking. So I hope that the examples had helped you so that you will know how to compute your equivalent points for your training.